hope everyone's doing well and welcome back to another weekly outlook. So cool. Great week for us. I think, of course the month has ended. We've got a new monthly candle opening. But I believe that was maybe three, maybe four positions on EU just practically back to back to back where it really rewarded us and we got the direction correct with the DXY. So quite a nice clean run, right? Now a very strong candle closure for October. And I would assume you guys are watching this, have been watching me for a while, so you should make the logical assumption that the next strong liquidity will be the next buy side liquidity. It is very much in reach, it's in proximity, and based on this candle's closure and the previous candle having a sweep and moving higher, I would really expect higher prices here, at least in the short to mid-term. Now, another thing to bear in mind is we're going into November. After November, we have December, and that is the year, right? And in terms of our yearly candle, we've had somewhat of a sweep into this, fair value gap, taking this low, taking the previous candle's low. So from here, for the remainder of the candle, I would expect a move up. Overall, do we still believe we are going to be bearish on the DXY? Yes, we have just cut interest rates. I think that cutting of interest rates will continue into the next year, potentially even at the next meeting. But in the mid to short term, like I said, as we're seeing the year out, I would expect that price trade higher. We reach for this liquidity pool, and once we do take this liquidity pool, things do become a bit tougher. It's harder to say where we want price to go. We might potentially end up thinking about this high over here, but it's still quite a distance away. So we'll just sort of keep that in the locker for now. Or rather, you know what? Before we even move on, I would first of all consider the new range for DXY. I was going to come back to this because we're going to discuss something very similar on EU. But I would consider this new range on DXY. I would take this low instead of this low. Just for now, I just don't like how this order block was formed. This low is much clearer. It gave us that OT and of course started that new leg of price action rather than this low, which was created in the middle of the range. Okay. US 10-year, very similar, actually aided the DXY last week. Quite a strong move up into that premium. Now it might be a bit for high resistance liquidity run if it decides it wants to go lower instead because it's sitting in that premium, hitting the order block. USDJPY, nice, cool. Not been the best to us because we have been in a euro position. We are still currently in a euro position, or I would assume at least most of the mentorship is to some extent, not the full position. But we finally taken that buy side target. We accumulated below that. I would say if we say the accumulation started from here, from essentially the end of June, start of July, all the way literally up until last week, which was practically the start of November. So a good 2 months or so sitting in that range, or rather, well, more than 2 months. That's almost 4. Completely wrong numbers there. Okay. Come down to the daily. We have a very clear leg of price action both ways in the short term. Regardless of where price wants to go, I would expect that we retrace into this zone, right? Whether price wants to go higher or whether this is going to be a giant AMD, we expect to move towards this area first to then sort of, assess which way we want to go. This week coming as well, we have the interest rate decision for the pound, right? And of course, with a new month opening up, we have ADP and NFP for the US dollar. I know it says we still have the government shutdown, so that's something to bear in mind, and some news events might get shifted, moved around. That's why this is tentative, because meaning that it potentially may not happen is dependent, right? But yeah, that's essentially the main ones to watch for this week. In terms of the intraday timings that shifted last week, due to the daylight saving time shift, it's back to normal this week, right? And of course, like we just said, for Euro GBP, this is going to be one to watch for interest rate decision on the pound coming up on the Thursday. Euro USD position, very nice. We had target 1 and 2, both targets were hit. Of course, based on what I just showed you guys on the DXY, clearly this has potential to go lower. Again, similar to DXY, we can sort of move the range from this high to the current low, and potentially we may even be able to consider it from this high but of course that's depending on how the week starts forming and what price starts doing. But for the time being, I'll sort of look at this as our current high, and I would expect lower prices, right? In the mentorship, the way we've dealt with this at least is that the major targets are hit. We've closed roughly about 80% of the position, and 20% is still running. And if price gives that retracement, I'll look to add a completely new position, and those will be stacked on each other. And we anticipate that Euro USD will remain bearish and head in this direction, potentially, very potentially, all the way up until this target. We will mark it out. Again, similar to the DXY target, it's quite a distance away, and there's no guarantee we push for it. But of course, it's visible to us, and if price wants to head lower, it would be the next logical target to push towards. It wants to sit in the right place. We'll leave it about there. USDCAD. Now, of course, we've shifted to a bullish framework, a much more confident bullish framework as well on DXY. And what we like to see is actually this sort of weekly close to go higher is not bad at all on USDCAD. We have been speaking about this, of course, for a little while. The big OTE and price sort of coming into that premium. So now, logically, when we zoom in a bit more, we need to see some sort of bullish order flow to actually push us into that zone, right? And that's what we see price doing. We've had quite a big move away, quite a nice sweep as well, sweeping low, and a nice rejection. And if somebody was interested in a position in this, I wouldn't say it's the worst pair by any means to go long on. You engineered a good bit of buy side liquidity. You've got that nice rejection to work with. So if price came into that discount, somebody may consider a bullish swing position. Me personally, I'm not a fan just yet. I'm still in that Euro position. I'm still hunting for a position on Euro once more if it's offered. I'm not really keeping my eyes on USDCAD just yet. Although it gave us this nice rejection, I don't think it's as clean. And of course, what with USDCAD not following in line with DXY as much, it makes it easier to navigate EU sometimes, especially when this chart becomes a bit choppy. USDCHF, big move into premium as we'd expect, but nothing to really work with in terms of entries just yet, I would say. In terms of targets, obviously we can push for the next buy side target, which is there. And if somebody was considering this pair, it's very tough to find somewhere to position, in my opinion. But I do like this low, and what we could do with this low to the current high, if it is offered, get rid of the big OT just to make things neater. See if a retracement is offered into this area. Right, it may take that high without the retracement. But if a retracement was offered in this area, it could be considered. USDJPY, not a horrible pair by any means, right? In terms of targets to work with, it's a bit tough, right? We can argue that this volume gap is the next straw. It's sort of, if we're logically lining up the next buy side targets on DXY and how we just did with USDCAD, USDCHF, this is probably a similar distance away to the next target. So I would again expect a bullish week. I wouldn't really expect previous weekly low to go. So therefore we could use that current low to the current high, see if a retracement is offered in this zone to push towards these equal highs, and of course that high, or this buy side liquidity here, feeding into the volume imbalance. Gold, big sweep, right, as expected. Equal lows between these two candles. We knew that was going to get swept, and price has now swept that, come back above. This would lead me to believe it is very likely we push for higher prices from here. Once more, new monthly candle as well, right? It puts us in a bit of a tough position. The weekly chart really screams, yes, let's get the bounce. The monthly chart sort of says, we might go for previous monthly low. So the two things I would bear in mind and potentially mark out is that if we're going to be bearish, this will be the next target. If anybody's trading this, that's the sort of zone I would look at, right? And potentially we may be ready to turn bullish on the flip side. So we want to see how price moves from here. If it's willing to sort of just extend and push and make that next leg of price action, then obviously hunt for the previous candle's high, which is these equal highs here. But of course, if it sort of accumulates a bit longer, right? Not just if it moves down, but if it accumulates a bit longer, it would probably suggest that we might get A, MD sort of reversal instead, right? S&P, quite a strong monthly close, right? We've marked that big nice whole number 7,000. Come over to the weekly, view it as this. Just want to see which swing point we use on daily. Yeah, very nice. We can play the area as this. I would really look for that previous weekly low sweep. If anybody does look at the S&P, I think this week it literally looks like a no-brainer. Previous weekly low sweep, you know, come into this fair value gap, and I would hunt for higher prices towards this zone. Literally just as simple as that. You've got nice daily OTE, nice daily range to work with. That discount zone, if it hits that, you can take a position, push towards there. And lastly, as usual, Bitcoin stuck in the accumulation, not much to work with. Weekly chart is very horrible, not good for the traders right now. Monthly candle, previous candle, no strong close. All these bodies clustered together. What does that show you? All these wicks, it's accumulating. That's it. That's all that can be said in terms of directional bias. Even in the short term, I wouldn't really be confident on much. We can see it's in a very tight range. You want to let BTC make the move first, and then from there think about, you know, should we engage, what we're waiting for, you know, so forth. But yeah, guys, that is it for the weekly outlook. As usual, any questions at all, anything I can help with, please just drop me a message.